It was past midnight when Michael was woken up by a soft, buzzing sound coming from the corner of his bedroom. Groggily, he opened his eyes and stared at the clock. It was 12:37 a.m. Why was he awake? He could barely remember falling asleep before. He could drift back into his sleep. The buzzing grew louder, and then he heard a voice. It was familiar, but tense. "Michael, are you awake?" It was Alara, his alien roommate. She had been living with him for the past few months, and though she was from another planet, she was kind and had never caused any trouble. But tonight, her voice sounded different, urgent, and worried. "Michael." Her voice came again, and this time she sounded almost frantic. He rubbed his eyes and sat up. "Alara, what's going on?" Alara was standing there, her large purple eyes wide with fear. Her short silver hair shimmered in the light, and she was wearing a thin robe that barely covered her alien features. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow faintly in the dim room. "I need your help," she said, her voice shaky. "I did something. I didn't mean to." Michael blinked, trying to shake off his sleepiness. "What do you mean? What happened?" Lara stepped into the room, holding something in her hands, something that glowed with a strange pulsing light. Michael frowned. It looked like an intricate device, almost like a compact machine, but he couldn't understand it. "I didn't know this would happen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was trying to fix the heating system and I thought I had it under control, but now I think I might have triggered something." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Triggered something?"
What kind of something?
Her eyes darted nervously, and she placed the glowing object down on the small desk near his bed. "The building's energy field. I think I've overloaded it, starting to affect the entire apartment. It's not safe anymore." Michael's mind was racing. He had no idea what she was talking about. An energy field? It's overloaded? He was just a regular human, living in a regular city. Didn't know the first thing about alien technology. But Alara, she was an alien. She was the one who understood all that stuff. Or at least, he thought she did. He rubbed his face and tried to focus. "So, what exactly is happening? Is the building going to explode or something?" Alara shook her head quickly. No, nothing that serious. But the power is becoming unstable. The energy field is starting to leak, and if it gets worse, it might affect the whole building. The devices in the building could go haywire. We need to fix it before it gets out of control." Michael stood up, trying to process everything she said. Okay. So, how do we fix it? Do you have a plan?" Laura nodded slowly, but she looked uncertain. "I was hoping you might help me." Michael blinked. "Help you? You're the one who knows about this stuff. You're from another planet. You've got all the fancy alien technology. Why would you need my help?" Her eyes met his, and she stepped closer. "Because ... I don't know how to explain it to you. The energy system is linked to my species' technology, and I can't make it work properly. I thought I could do it on my own, but I can't. You're good with machines. You fixed things before, haven't you?" Michael frowned. "That's different. I fix small stuff around the apartment. I'm not an expert. I don't know anything about energy, fields, or alien tech." She looked at him earnestly. "But you're clever, Michael. You've always been able to figure things out. I trust you." "I wouldn't ask if I didn't need help." For a moment, Michael was quiet. He wasn't sure what to think. He had always liked Alara. She wasn't like other aliens he had seen. She was calm, friendly, and quiet. She didn't act like she was superior or different. But now she was asking for his help with something way beyond his understanding. Still, he couldn't say no. He had always helped her with little things, like finding the best food from the human market, or explaining some basic human customs that confused her. She had always been grateful, and he didn't want to let her down now, especially when she was clearly in a panic. "Okay, I'll help," he said, standing up and stretching. "But you'll have to explain it to me step by step. I don't know anything about alien gadgets or energy fields." Alara smiled weakly, relieved. "Thank you, Michael. I knew you'd understand." She led him over to the desk where the strange device lay, still glowing. Michael leaned closer to examine it. He didn't understand how it worked, but he could see it was small. "Now," Michael asked, his voice uncertain. He felt like he was in way over his head. Alara took a deep breath. I think we need to deactivate the energy field manually. I'll need your help to figure out which part of the system controls the energy flow. You might have to connect it to something. But first we need to shut down the power. Michael nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it. Alara's eyes softened with gratitude. Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you. As the two of them set to work, Michael could only hope that somehow they'd be able to fix this before the building's energy field collapsed. Entirely, it was the middle of the night, and everything seemed uncertain. But one thing was clear. This was a challenge neither of them could face alone. Michael stood by Alara as she looked over the glowing device on the desk. It wasn't much to look at, a small, smooth object covered in strange markings, but it was pulsing with an energy that made the air feel thick. He could feel the tension in his chest rise with every second they wasted. All right, Alara, what exactly do I need to do here? He asked, trying to focus his thoughts. His mind was still foggy from being woken up so suddenly, but now the seriousness of the situation hit him. They had to fix this. Alara was standing over the device, her long fingers tracing the strange symbols on its surface. Her purple eyes, usually so calm, were wide with worry. She turned to Michael. I need you to connect this to the building's energy flow system, she said. But it's tricky. The wiring is different from anything you're used to. Michael looked at the device and then at her. You mean I have to wire this thing into the building's power system? She nodded. Yes. But first, we need to find the energy control panel. I'll show you. Once we get there, you'll need to override the system. I don't know how to explain it, but we'll make it work. Michael nodded, trying to stay calm. Okay, lead the way. Alara moved quickly, her footsteps light as she walked toward the door. Michael followed, his heart racing. Wasn't sure what he was doing or what he was about to face, but there was no turning back now. He had agreed to help, and now they were in this together. The hallways of their building were quiet, but the air felt thick. Michael could feel the building's strange energy, like the walls themselves were vibrating ever so slightly. He glanced at Alara, who was moving with purpose but still seemed anxious. This is different from anything I've ever dealt with, she said quietly. If we don't fix this soon, the whole building could go into chaos. The energy field could disrupt everything, and it might spread beyond the building. Michael's stomach twisted. We can't let that happen. No, we can't, she agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. That's why I need you, Michael. I know you don't understand how it works, but you're the only one I can trust with this. He wasn't sure why she trusted him, but he was starting to believe it. He had always helped her before, fixing small things around the apartment, helping her learn human habits and customs. But this was different. This was much bigger than anything he had ever imagined. Still, he couldn't back down now. They reached a door at the end of the hall, and Alara stopped. The door was locked, but she quickly pressed a button on her wrist, and the door opened with a soft click. They stepped inside. The room was small, but filled with various wires, panels, and strange alien technology. In the middle of the room stood a large circular device that was connected to the building's power grid. It hummed with energy, and Michael could feel the heat radiating from it. This is the main control system, Alara explained. You need to access the central core and reset it. But it's not going to be easy. Michael nodded, his mind racing as he looked at the system. He had never worked with anything like this before. The wires were unlike anything he'd seen alien tech that didn't make sense to him, but he had to try. All right, I'll do my best, he said. Trying to steady his nerves, Alara stepped back, watching him carefully. Take your time, but be quick. The power surge is getting stronger. Michael took a deep breath and started to work. He carefully examined the wires and the connections, trying to make sense of what was in front of him. His hands trembled slightly, but he pushed through. He had fixed electrical problems before, but nothing like this. As he worked, Alara remained silent, watching him closely. Michael could feel the weight of her gaze on him, but he didn't mind. She was trusting him with something huge, and he wasn't about to let her down. I'm going to try to override the system, Alara said after a moment, stepping forward. It will take a lot of energy, but I might be able to stop the power from spreading. It's dangerous, but if it works, it'll stabilize the entire building. Michael looked at her. Are you sure you can do this? She nodded, though there was a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. I have to. It's the only way. Without another word, she placed her hands on the control panel. There was a soft hum, and the device began to glow brighter. The room filled with a strange electric charge. Michael could feel the tension building, and he hurried to finish his work. The wires in front of him were starting to make more sense now. He carefully connected the device to the system, his hands moving faster as the power surged around them. He was working against the clock, and the pressure was mounting. Michael, hurry, Ilara urged, her voice filled with urgency. I can feel the energy building. It's about to go critical. He had to focus. He had to finish this with one final twist. Michael connected the last wire. The device hummed loudly, and the room seemed to shake with the power running through it. Ilara stepped back, her face pale. It's done, Michael said, wiping the sweat from his brow. But I'm not sure if it'll hold, the device began to glow brighter, and Ilara stepped forward once more, placing her hands on the control panel. This time, the glow intensified, and the air around them seemed to crackle with energy. Michael could hear the building systems coming to life, and then, just as suddenly, everything went still. The lights flickered for a moment, but then steadied. The humming sound faded. The strange vibrations that had filled the air were gone. They stood in silence, staring at the control panel. I think we did it, Michael said, his voice filled with disbelief. Ilara nodded, a small smile breaking through her anxiety. We did. But as she turned to him, Michael noticed something he hadn't before. There was more to her than he had realized. She wasn't just an alien roommate. She was a friend. And in that moment, Michael knew he would do anything to protect her. The room was silent after they deactivated the energy field. And Michael stood there, still unsure if they had really fixed everything. He glanced at Ilara, who was staring at the control panel. Her usual calm demeanor was back, but there was a nervous edge to her expression. We did it, Michael said, his voice filled with surprise. We actually fixed it. Ilara turned to him, a small smile tugging at her lips. Yes, we did. But we've only solved part of the problem. Michael frowned, confused. What do you mean? The building's power is stable now, right? She nodded slowly. Yes, the immediate danger is over. But there's something else we need to consider. The energy that was leaking out. It's tied to something much larger. It's not just the building's power. It's part of a bigger network, one that connects different sectors of the city. If the system was compromised here, it could affect more than just our building. It could spread. Michael's stomach dropped. You mean it could happen again? Ilara hesitated before answering. Yes, if the damage isn't repaired completely, the entire city could be at risk. Michael couldn't believe it. Had barely been able to fix one part of the problem, and now it seemed like there was a much bigger issue waiting for them. The thought of the entire city being in danger made his head spin. So, what do we do now? He asked, trying to steady his nerves. How do we stop this from spreading? Lara walked over to the desk, her eyes scanning the small device that had caused the malfunction. It still glowed faintly, its power not entirely gone. We need to go to the central energy hub. It's located near the city's main control station. The problem is, there's a high security area that we'll need to bypass in order to get there. Michael's mind raced. A high security area? He wasn't sure if he was ready for that. He wasn't a soldier, just an ordinary guy trying to live a normal life. He didn't know anything about breaking into secure places, and he certainly didn't. Want to get in trouble with the authorities? Are you sure we can do this? He asked, looking at Ilara. I mean, breaking into a high security area sounds dangerous. Ilara met his gaze, her expression serious but not without a touch of warmth. I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe you could help. I know it's a lot to ask, but this is the only way to prevent things from getting worse. We have to act quickly. Michael thought for a moment. It already helped her once tonight. He couldn't back out now, especially when the stakes were so high. But the thought of sneaking into a high-security zone made him uneasy. What if they got caught? What if something went wrong? But then, he looked at Ilara again. She had trusted him enough to involve him in all of this, and he wasn't about to let her down. They were in this together. All right, he said, his voice firm. Let's do it. What's the plan? Ilara smiled slightly, relieved. Thank you, Michael. We'll need to move quickly. I have a way to disable the security systems temporarily, but we won't have much time once we're inside. We'll have to be fast. She quickly began to gather her things. She grabbed a small device from a hidden compartment in the wall and handed it to Michael. It looked like a tiny handheld communicator. This will help us stay in contact while we're inside the secure area. I'll need you to follow my lead. I'll do most of the work, but I'll need your help to navigate through the area. You'll have to be quick and quiet. Michael nodded, still feeling the weight of the situation. I'll do my best. With that, they left the apartment and made their way out into the city. The streets were quieter than usual, with fewer people out at this late hour. The hum of alien technology filled the air. Michael couldn't help but feel like they were walking through a world that was both familiar and completely foreign at the same time. As they reached the security checkpoint near the central energy hub, Michael's heart began to race. The building loomed ahead, a tall structure made of sleek metal and glowing panels. It was heavily guarded, and there were patrols circling the area. Ilara paused, glancing at the building's security cameras. We need to move quickly, she whispered. I'll disable the cameras for a few minutes, but that's all the time we'll have.
Ow!
Once they're back online, we'll have to be out of there. Michael nodded, his throat dry. Got it. Ilara tapped a few buttons on her communicator, and the security cameras flickered before going dark. They quickly slipped past the first set of guards, moving through the shadows. Michael's mind raced with every step. He couldn't believe he was sneaking through a high-security zone, but he had no choice. Lara was counting on him. They reached the door to the control station. It was locked, of course, but Ilara didn't hesitate. She produced a small device from her pocket and placed it against the door. Within seconds, it slid open. Inside, the room was filled with blinking lights, computer terminals, and an array of alien tech that Michael couldn't begin to understand. But he didn't have time to think about it. Ilara quickly moved to one of the control panels, typing in a series of commands. We're almost there, she said, her fingers moving rapidly. Once I override the system, we'll be able to shut down the energy flow and fix the problem for good. But we don't have much time before the security cameras come back online. Michael kept an eye on the door, his heart pounding. Sound seemed to echo through the room, and he was sure any moment they'd be discovered. But he stayed focused. He had to help Ilara. He had to make sure they didn't fail now. The minutes felt like hours as Michael stood guard by the door, his pulse quickening with every footstep that echoed outside the control room. He glanced over at Ilara, who was still working at the control panel, her eyes fixed on the screen. Her fingers moved with precision, tapping buttons at a speed that left Michael amazed. She was so calm, but he could see the tension in the way her body held itself. She was under pressure. We're almost there, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of the machines. Michael nodded, trying to steady his breathing. He couldn't shake the feeling that any second they would be caught. The security system was about to come back online, and they didn't have much time. Ilara's hands hovered over the keyboard as she typed in a final sequence of commands. The room buzzed with energy, and the lights flickered for a brief moment.
Oh.
For a split second, Michael thought they had been discovered. But then the lights steadied, and Ilara let out a quiet breath of relief. It's done, she said, turning to him with a slight smile. The energy flow is under control. The system is reset. Michael felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. The threat was over, or so he thought. Before he could relax, a loud alarm suddenly blared, echoing through the room. Hart stopped as red lights began flashing around them. The sound of heavy footsteps grew closer, and he knew they had been discovered. Ilara's face hardened in an instant. They've activated the emergency alert. We've been compromised.
Michael's
mind raced. What do we do now? We can't stay here? Ilara quickly scanned the room. There's a hidden exit in the back. It'll lead us to a service tunnel, but we have to move fast. Without another word, Ilara grabbed Michael's hand and pulled him toward the back of the room.
Ow.
They rushed, past rows of alien technology, dodging flashing lights and beeping alarms. The footsteps outside grew louder. Michael could feel his heart pounding in his chest. They reached the back of the room where a small door blended into the wall. Lara pressed a hidden button, and the door slid open with a quiet hiss. Slipped through, and the door closed behind them, muffling the sounds of the alarms. The service tunnel was narrow and dimly lit, but it was their only way out. Michael followed Alara closely, trying to keep his mind focused. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the tunnel, but they couldn't afford to stop. They had to get out of there before the authorities caught up to them. As they ran, Elira's voice broke the silence. "The tunnel leads to an old maintenance area. It's a long shot, but it might be our only way to escape." Michael nodded, too, focused on the escape to speak. His mind was racing, trying to think of what to do next. They were almost free, but they still had a long way to go. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever, but eventually they reached a small maintenance room. Alara quickly worked to unlock the door, and it creaked open. They stepped inside, and Michael could finally breathe a little easier. They had made it past the hardest part, but they weren't in the clear yet. The room was filled with old equipment, some of it human-made, some alien. Alara's eyes scanned the room, looking for something. Then her gaze landed on a panel in the corner. "I think I can use this," she said, moving quickly to the panel. Michael kept watch, his ears straining for any sounds of approaching footsteps. His heart was still racing, and he could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins. Alara worked at the panel, pressing buttons and adjusting wires. "We're almost there," she said, her voice steady despite the situation. "Once I bypass the security grid, we'll be able to get out of here without being detected." Michael could hear the faint sound of footsteps again, and his nerves flared. "Hurry, Alara," he urged. "We don't have much time." She didn't respond, but Michael could tell she was working as fast as she could. The security system was complicated, but Alara seemed to know exactly what she was doing. She moved with confidence, tapping buttons and making quick adjustments. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the panel beeped, and the security grid powered down. Alara stepped back, a satisfied look on her face. "We're in. We can get out now." Michael exhaled in relief. "Thank you." "I don't know what I would have done without you." Alara smiled at him, her eyes softening. "You did just fine. You kept up, and you stayed calm when it counted. We make a good team." He smiled back, but their brief moment of relief was interrupted by the sound of distant voices echoing in the tunnel. They weren't alone anymore. "We need to move," Alara said urgently. "Follow me. There's a back exit just ahead." They rushed toward the exit, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. The footsteps behind them grew louder, and Michael could hear the muffled voices of the guards. They were getting closer. Led him through a narrow corridor, and soon they reached another door. She pressed a hidden button, and the door opened into a small alley behind the building. The night air hit Michael's face, and he breathed deeply, grateful for the fresh air after being in that underground maze. "We did it," Alara said. Turning to face him, Michael nodded, still catching his breath. "Yeah, we did. But we're not out of danger yet, are we?" Alara shook her head. "Not yet. But we've bought ourselves some time. We need to lay low for a while. The authorities will be looking for us." Michael looked around, his mind still spinning from the night's events. He had gone from being woken up in the middle of the night to breaking into a high-security area and almost getting caught by alien guards. It was a lot to process, but he was grateful they had made it out alive. "Where do we go from here?" he asked. Alara smiled, a look of determination in her eyes. "We keep moving, and we fix what we started." The alley behind the building was quiet, but the air felt heavy with tension. Michael stood with Alara, both of them trying to catch their breath after the close call they had just escaped. The night was still, the city's usual hum of activity. Muffled by the early hours, they had narrowly avoided capture, but they both knew the danger wasn't over. "We need to get far from here," Alara said, looking over her shoulder as if expecting the authorities to come rushing down the alley. At any moment, Michael nodded, his mind racing. He had no idea where they were going or what their next move would be, but he trusted Alara. She had kept him calm through everything, and now she was leading him away from danger. He didn't want to let her down. Alara took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the quiet street ahead. "We'll head to a safe house, I know," It's a bit out of the way, but it'll give us time to think. You can lay low there for a while. Michael was about to speak when a distant siren wailed. He froze, his heart skipping a beat. The authorities were searching for them. They needed to move fast. We don't have much time, he said, his voice low but urgent. Let's go. Without another word, Alara grabbed his hand and pulled him down the alley. They moved quickly, sticking to the shadows as they passed through quiet streets. Michael couldn't help but notice how different everything seemed. He had grown up in this city, but tonight it felt like a strange, unfamiliar world. Everything felt more intense, more dangerous. Every corner seemed like it could be their last. Ilara led him through winding back streets and hidden paths, places Michael had never noticed before. She moved with purpose, never hesitating or looking back. It was clear she had been in situations like this before. She knew how to stay hidden. After what felt like an eternity of running, they finally reached a small, unassuming building tucked between two larger, more imposing structures. It looked like a regular shop, but Michael could tell there was something more to it. Ilara approached the door and pressed a small, hidden button on the side of the building. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a narrow staircase that led down into the shadows. This is it, Ilara said, motioning for Michael to follow her. We'll be safe here for now. Michael followed her down the staircase, his footsteps echoing in the narrow corridor. The air grew cooler as they descended, and Michael could smell the faint scent of old wood and dust. It felt like they were stepping into a different world entirely. At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a small, dimly lit room. The walls were lined with shelves, filled with strange objects and pieces of alien technology. There was a small bed in the corner and a desk covered in papers and tools. It looked like a safe house, but not one designed for luxury. This place was functional, made to keep people hidden. Ilara set down the device they had stolen from the central energy hub, and Michael watched her as she began to examine it. She was calm now, but Michael could see the signs of exhaustion on her face. The night had been long, and they both needed rest. But there was no time for sleep, not yet. She turned to him, her face serious. We can't stop now. The authorities will be looking for us, and they'll know we were at the energy hub. They'll trace everything back to me. We need to fix this before they catch up. Michael sat down on the bed, feeling the weight of the situation pressing on him. Don't understand, he said quietly. What exactly did we do? I mean, we fixed the energy flow, but it feels like there's still something bigger going on. Ilara looked at him for a long moment before speaking. There is. What we've done tonight is just the beginning.
Hey.
The device we took is part of a larger network that controls energy for the entire city. It's a delicate balance. If the system fails completely, it could cause a citywide blackout or worse. It could destabilize the energy grid and create a power surge that could damage everything. Michael's mind raced as he tried to process everything she was saying. He had no idea the stakes were this high. He thought they were just trying to fix a minor malfunction, but this was something much bigger, so we're in even more trouble. Now, he asked, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. Yes, Ilara said, her voice steady but filled with concern. If we don't fix the entire system, the damage could be irreversible. The authorities won't stop until they find me. I'm a threat to their control. They'll do whatever it takes to stop us. Michael stood up, feeling the weight of her words settle in. He had never been involved in something like this before, but now he was part of it. He had no idea how to fix the energy grid. But he knew one thing. He couldn't let Ilara face this alone. We can't just let it all fall apart, said determination rising in his chest. What do we need to do next? Ilara looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and urgency. There's another device, one more critical component to the system. It's located at the main energy relay station. We need to get there before the authorities do. If we don't, the entire city could go dark, and we won't be able to stop the chaos that follows. Michael nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle on him. They were running out of time, and the world around them seemed to be closing in. But he wasn't going to back down now. We'll fix it, he said, his voice firm. I don't know how, but we'll figure it out. Ilara smiled, a small but genuine smile that made Michael feel like they were in this together.
I knew.
You would say that, she said. Now let's get some rest. Tomorrow, we finish what we started. As they sat down in the small, dimly lit room, Michael couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. But for the first time that night, he felt like he was part of something important. They weren't just running anymore, they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. And he wasn't about to let Alara face it alone. The morning light barely touched the narrow windows of the safe house. But Michael could still feel the weight of the day ahead. He had gotten only a few hours of sleep, but his mind raced with thoughts of the next steps. They had no more time to waste. The authorities would be looking for them. And the energy crisis wasn't going to fix itself. Alara had already gotten up. And he found her sitting by the desk, her eyes focused on a series of maps and data screens. She looked tired but determined, her fingers moving quickly as she worked through the details of their next mission. Morning, Michael said quietly, walking over to join her. How's it looking? Alara glanced up at him, her expression serious. We're running out of time. The main energy relay station is heavily guarded, and the authorities are increasing their patrols. If we don't get there soon, they'll lock it down completely. Michael swallowed hard. He hadn't expected things to get worse. So, what's the plan? She pointed to a map on the screen. There's a back entrance to the relay station. It's not well guarded, but we'll have to move fast. I can disable the security systems temporarily, but once we're inside, we'll need to act quickly. The energy relay is controlled by a central device that will stabilize the system, but we'll have to shut it down before it's too late. Michael nodded. All right, let's do it. We don't have much time. They quickly gathered what little gear they had, tools, communication devices, and the small alien device they had taken from the control hub. Alara led the way out of the safe house, moving quickly through the quiet streets.
Michael
tried to keep up his mind focused on what lay ahead. He had no idea how to stop a citywide energy crisis, but he trusted Alara. If anyone could do it, it was her. The streets were quieter than usual, and Michael could hear the faint sounds of sirens in the distance. It felt like the whole city was on edge, like something big was about to happen. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Alara stopped for a moment, glancing around the corner. We're close, she whispered. Stay alert. They continued down a narrow alleyway, the buildings on either side towering above them. The air felt heavy, charged with energy. Michael could hear his heart pounding in his chest, but he tried to focus. There was no turning back now. When they reached the entrance to the relay station, Alara quickly scanned the area. No guards, she said, her voice low. This is our chance. She pulled out a small device and attached it to the door's security panel. The device beeped softly, and the door slid open with a quiet hiss, his nerves on edge. The space beyond was dark, lit only by the dim glow of alien technology. The hum of energy filled the air. Michael could feel the vibrations in the floor beneath his feet. Alara moved with purpose, heading straight for the central control panel. Michael stayed close behind her, trying to stay as quiet as possible. Every sound seemed to echo in the empty space, and he couldn't help but glance over his shoulder every few seconds. He was sure they were being watched. Once they reached the control panel, Alara began working quickly, typing in commands and adjusting wires. Michael watched as she worked, impressed by how quickly she moved. She seemed to know exactly what she was doing. We're almost there, she said, not looking up from the panel. Once I disconnect the system from the main grid, we'll have to activate the stabilizing device. But we only have a few minutes before the backup systems kick in. Michael nodded, trying to stay calm. Got it. Just tell me what to do. Alara's hands moved faster as she worked, the lights around them flickering briefly as the system struggled to keep up. She paused for a moment, glancing at Michael. I need you to hold this wire in place while I connect the stabilizer. I don't make the connection in time. The system will overload. Michael didn't hesitate. He grabbed the wire and held it steady, feeling the faint pulse of energy run through it. His heart raced, and his hands were sweaty, but he focused on the task at hand. This was it. They were so close. Alara worked quickly, her fingers moving. With practiced ease, She plugged in the stabilizer, and for a moment, the whole room seemed to hum with energy. The control panel flashed green, and Michael felt the tension in the air lift. Even if just a little. It's done, Ilara said, her voice filled with relief. We've stabilized the system. The city's energy grid should be back to normal. Michael let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. We did it, he said, a smile breaking across his face. We actually did it. But just as they thought they were in the clear, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway outside. Ilara's eyes widened. We need to go now. Hesitation. Ilara grabbed Michael's hand, pulling him toward the back exit. They ran through the dark hallways, their footsteps echoing as they raced toward freedom. Michael's mind was still spinning from everything that had happened. They had just saved the city, but now they had to escape before the authorities caught up with them. They reached the back exit, and Ilara quickly deactivated the security systems. The door slid open, and they stepped out into the night air once again. The sirens were closer now, but they had a head start as they made their way through the dark streets. Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. They had done what no one else could have done. It had saved the city. When they finally reached a safe location, Ilara stopped and turned to face him. Thank you, she said softly. I couldn't have done it without you. Michael smiled. Still catching his breath. We make a good team, Lara nodded, her expression serious. We do, and I'm glad we were able to fix what we started. But the authorities won't stop looking for us. We need to be ready for whatever comes next. Looked at her, knowing that whatever the future held, he wouldn't face it alone. They had each other, and that was enough.